Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6. I'm going to split this into two parts because it's just so much to cover. So, this is going to be part one. Before I do start, I just want to say everything I say in these episodes is fact checked, legally sound, and backed by evidence. If it wasn't, I'd be in court by now. I don't deal in gossip, so I deal in the truth, in lived experience, court records, and the kind of paperwork that people like to ignore until it's too late. So just before anyone comes charging in, maybe brush up on your own facts first. Just saying. Um, the episode also contains discussion of family violence, control, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised. Um, if you've listened before, you'll know about the night in December last year. That's the reference point for where this episode's going to kick off. So that night, it didn't start with a fight, it started days earlier. Um, so a message came through from a female stranger, maybe like 3 days ish before, no, I guess when thinking about that night, it's probably like a week before. But anyway, so a message came through from a person, a girl who told me that my ex had been cheating, sending her messages for days with clear intent. She didn't do it to cause trouble. She's actually a bit of a hero to me, to be honest, because too often women don't really speak out to help other women when I feel like they always should. But anyway, she did. So she dug a bit deeper and saw that my ex had a young child and a long term partner and decided to not keep quiet about it. So, what she didn't know was that her message was kind of exactly what I needed at the time. I was already getting close to sort of that tipping point of like wanting to cut and run. But it was really sort of more, I just kept getting pushed back and like gaslit and like made to feel like I was crazy and just like so many other things. So when this happened, I think it was a bit validating for me because I already knew it. Like I already well and truly knew that cheating had been going on for ages, but like I couldn't prove it. And previously, when I had tried to, like with blatant evidence, like to his face, he would even just be like, "That's not me," and I was like, and yeah, anyway, so I was confident. I was like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to have like solid evidence so that when I am ready to confront him, I've at least got this. And like, you can't argue with that in theory. So she waited a few days and gathered some evidence and stuff, sort of kept it going without being committing to anything or doing anything inappropriate. Not that that's really important, but yeah, anyway, she kept it going to basically get more and more evidence. Um, and then obviously that way, the more evidence, the better. Um, so when she finally told him, that was like maybe a couple days after I initially found out, because I couldn't continue to just like sleep next to this person knowing like what they'd done. But anyway, so anyway, she initially I was just gonna approach it, and then I was trying to do the smart thing and be safe, and like knowing previously when confronted with like things that have been done wrong, it's very a defensive response all the time, which often ends in violence and you know damage and stuff like that. So uh, I ended up um, saying it might be better if she just lets him know that I know, like that she's told me. And then that way I could plan and not be at home and um, yeah, just not be around just until sort of like the cool down happened, and then we could try to hopefully civilly talk about it. So the worst thing you can do, turns out, to someone who thrives on control is take away their ability to control and to spin the story. So confronted with like the fact that I'd been told and that I had the evidence, I think he knew it was kind of game over and there was no getting out of it. And that was like, yeah, that's where I actually probably messed up, where I thought I was trying to be smart, but I probably messed up because I thought I'd handled it well, but um, yeah, like that's when he unraveled, I guess. Um, so I had left to stay with a friend thinking that it'd be safer for me not to be there. Um, but yeah, like as soon as she busted him, he called me and demanded I come home. Um, and from that point, like the stalking and stuff just kind of ramped up tenfold, like it was crazy. The next little while. So, from memory, so yeah, so my friend that I was with actually called the police, the non-emergency line, and said, "Look, my friend's got to go home, but I'm genuinely worried about her. Um, can you send someone around to meet her there, basically, so that when I got there, because obviously, like he was picking up, not obviously, but he was picking up our child as well, so I needed to make sure that she was safe, and I needed to get home safely, and then remove her from the situation if there was any issues. So the I got there, and then police did end up getting there that day, and anyway, when that happened, that was like the first time. I think they were called like three times, three separate call outs over like a couple of like consecutive nights, and then I think like by the third time or something, I then decided that that was it, and I took. Actually, I spoke to the family violence counselling guys, and they were really helpful and made me like see, because he'd been asked by the police to leave to cool down for the night or whatever. And so I was like, yeah, okay, like that's, I should be fine. And then they, made a good point that like, there's every chance that he won't listen and he'll come back and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, yeah, right, better to be safe than sorry. Grabbed my daughter and left to go to a friend's house and stayed there the night. And then the he was going crazy, I guess, because he didn't know where I was, and he then knew like he was like, "You've taken my daughter," and all this kind of shit. So um, that then it just escalated more and more, and I was getting more and more scared. And my friend was talking to me, and I was talking about like to the counselors and just like trying to figure out what to do. Anyway, I came to the decision that I wanted to get an order for protection for us. And then when I called to start to arrange that, officer that turned up to do that was the same officer that did the call outs to the house. And he was, it's just quite funny how like opinions change, I guess. He ended up, was not, I guess, not very understanding of the severity of what was going on. Basically, long story short, he talked me down to doing a protective order just against myself, like just to protect myself, so that we could continue to live together in the same house, but hopefully, like in the hopes that that would, um, pull him into line a little bit and give him a bit of a wake up call. So that's what the idea behind that was. However, within 3 days from that point, that's when everything went to shit. And that's when the whole like hostage crap like all happened. Like, yeah, 3 days later. Um, and by which point, like, he knew the point that he'd messed up and that I was going to have to basically like report him for breaching that order. Um, and I think that actually just, that sort of like made him spiral even more. So, yeah, like it just kind of went out of control from that point. Uh, anyway, sorry, got a bit sidetracked there. Mm. Oh, so the yeah, so I was kind of hopeful that that would work basically because like there'd been previous incidents, I guess, before me where it made me think that like I guess he had maybe a bit of respect for authority enough that he would know, you I don't know what I'm trying to say. I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't say it. Sorry. Anyway, so 3 days later, that illusion obviously broke. By the time I got home, he then locked every door, had the keys, had the phone, knife came out, and that's when you stop sort of planning and then start negotiating. Um, so for hours, I tried everything, like tried reasoning, being calm, silence. Um, there was emotions, there was tears, there was lots and lots of different things, obviously, because um, my daughter was there as well. I did at one point beg him to at least let her go, but that didn't happen. There was like, yeah, there were a few different like scenarios that I was trying to play out in my head, like what do I suggest this? What do I suggest this? And like I feel like we got close a few times, but then yeah, it just didn't happen. Because every option like ended in his mind, which I understand. I don't understand. I do understand. I understand in his mind that to him, every option ended in prison, and that to him was the worst thing in the whole world. So, um, yeah, like I understand like the trapped feeling that was being felt by him when we were actually the ones that were trapped. Anyway, I'm sorry. So anyway, people imagine these nights as screaming matches. They're not. They're long, sick negotiations that happen behind closed doors. You measure every word because one word, one wrong syllable might tip the balance. In the US, FBI data calls this domestic violence hostage taking. It happens more often than anyone admits. Doors are locked, phones are gone, and kids are present, which I thought was really interesting. It's very, very, very common. Um, Negotiation buys time, but it really changes intent. About a third of these situations end up in police intervention, a third end up in suicide, and a third end up in homicide before help can even arrive. So that's the math that survivors live with, including myself, when I constantly think back to like what I could have done better or did I do the best I could have done and how much worse could that have ended up being. And yeah, so like I try to just remind myself that that's really, you know, 2 out of 3 of those things would be like the worst case scenario, and I managed to, yeah, I need to sort of give myself enough credit, I guess. And it's more, the point of that was just to remind anybody who's like done that or like is questioning what they did, why they did it, like just you did the best you could. We only ever can, especially when we're in survival mode, and even more especially when there's a kid involved. So just be kind to yourself. Um, so yes, so the safety myths, which is what I sort of alluded to a little bit in my trailer. So afterwards, after this the main event or whatever it is goes down, everyone wants to give advice. They mean well, obviously, but you generally tend to hear a lot from like counsellors, support workers, and even police about like safety plans and stuff. Um, and that's all well and good, but some of it ends up, in people being killed. Um, so there's just a couple of like, I guess, safety myths in some cases, not all cases, but just things that I've come across when reading stories and stuff like that. And then obviously lived experience like that perhaps aren't the best like things to advise people maybe, or it's just all I'm saying is just like hear it out, but like just consider both sides of it because there will be some circumstances and each case is unique and individual, but there will be some where it won't be the best option and you best and that person best. Um, and if you're anything like me, you'll play out multiple scenarios in your head before you do anything. So you just want to do whatever's going to like be least likely to lead to like them becoming more volatile and stuff. So the first safety myth is leave when they're asleep. Um, Anyone who's dealt with someone who is, I guess, like jumpy or very quick and like reflexes and defensive and stuff, they tend to be light sleepers. Like they're probably really heavy sleepers, but when it comes to something like that, they'd be light sleepers. I don't really know how that works. I feel there's probably some sort of psychology in the brain that does that, but yeah, like any kind of like um breaking noise or crash or something generally will cause them to wake up really quickly. So if they've got like a feeling or a vibe or like hear a creak or something and it just doesn't sound right, even in their sleep state, they will be highly likely to wake up. Which is just crazy creepy. But if they wake, you're not escaping. You're running for your life with like maybe a head start of 10 seconds if you're lucky. The next one's reverse park, so you can drive off quicker. I have mixed feelings about this. I think that it's a good one to have because it's always seemingly better to do that because then the idea is that you can exit quicker. So if you get in the car and stuff, you can leave quicker. Um, that's good unless there's no exit. So if there's nowhere to go, like if that person can drive in, like, I don't know, it'd be easy to block people off. And then also, like, if a perpetrator is going to pull up and see that, they're going to think, oh, okay, they're going to preemptively think ahead and think, okay, well, I need to block this person so that they can't get out. Whereas if the car's parked like front facing to the house or whatever, like not reverse faced, oh, I know what I mean, then maybe they won't even think about it because they'll be in such a fluster of what they're doing that they just may not even think about it. So I know that sounds a bit complicated, but I'm just trying to like think like that, I guess. And yeah, it just signals to them that you're potentially going to flee, so they'll block you in potentially, or potentially because you just never really know. Like no one thing is the same. Tell a neighbor. That one is sometimes good if you've got like reliable neighbors or trustworthy neighbors and stuff. Um, Sometimes it's not. So I did at my old residence, at the advice of counsellors and officers and stuff, like suggesting it. It does definitely seem like a good idea, and if you are comfortable doing that, please do. But this was sort of a scenario where it didn't backfire, but I was then seen as the problem, well, not the problem, but like it's like a quiet neighborhood, and then all of a sudden, all these police cars are there, like a police car's there quite frequently, and then it just in my case it was like, oh well, we don't need to know like the intricate parts of your life or whatever. This was also after the December incident that I was told that, so a little bit too late, but still, um, I said, like, I explained to them what had happened and that if I had prearranged that, I could have somehow got like a signal to them or, got my daughter to run out or well, not that I would have been able to, but it just would have given me more options potentially to raise an alarm to them. So they definitely understood what I meant by that. And they weren't nasty about it, but it was definitely a very sort of cold, like, I felt very shut off after that. And there was a lot of avoidance and stuff after that as well. So just be mindful of that. If you're in a situation currently where you're not ready to leave, maybe, and you know that your neighbours should be okay, but you haven't talked to them yet, I'd probably suggest just trying to meet them just generally and like get to know them or just gauge whether you think you can trust them or whatever. There's probably going to be times where you can't, like if they're, I don't know, like a bloke or something, and like you think they might then talk to the partner. You just need to make sure like it's only a trusted person as much as you can trust them, and then only in like an emergency situation, and then just make like a plan with them as to if I send this, then this means this, call the cops, or if you see like an unusual vehicle or whatever around, like message me or call the cops or whatever. So just think about it. It's when I say myths, I don't mean like they don't work. It's just like there are also potential negative consequences to them as well. So get a protection order is a great one. So as the name of this suggests, paper doesn't stop fire. It doesn't stop fists. It doesn't stop knives. Like it doesn't stop the behaviour, especially when they breach. So an order, just get an order, is basically just as good as someone saying, why don't you just leave? Like it's not that fucking easy, but anyway. But I feel like that one pretty much speaks for itself. Don't argue as if arguing is the problem, not the violence itself. Abusers don't argue, they dictate. You can't debate someone who controls when you speak and when you breathe. Like, it's not about arguing, it's really about, trying to maintain strength, I guess. But yeah, I think that's a bit of a complicated one anyway to go into for just now. Change your route. So this is an interesting one as well. So that's often recommended to change your route or routine, like for where you're going, so that you don't get like followed or whatever. But in my world, routine was actually safer for me. So the only reason my daughter even made it to daylight after that night was because I still had to take her to daycare. So I used that to my advantage after realizing there was just no escaping to just get through the night. Breaking that routine would have raised red flags because the centre already knew something was up. They knew about the abuse for like a couple of years before this had even happened. They like ongoing knew about it. With the daycare, like we used to pass like a notebook back and forth and stuff. So in case there was like anything important to like leave in there, that we needed to sort of subtly get notes to each other, which wasn't often. It was just good to have it, especially during like some pretty high pressure times as well. Anyway, so yeah, that would have raised red flags to them, and even though it was never really like I never mentioned that specifically to him that they were aware of anything because like I'm not stupid, but I do still think he kind of knew because he saw how close I was with the educators, and like I think I don't know, they're smarter than people think they are in a lot of ways. So I definitely think he knew, and probably made him a bit suspicious. So anyway, so he came. That's why he came with us that morning. in the car, like wouldn't leave my side. Um, and again, he knows that if he did, it meant that I would have just called the cops straight away because like, duh. Um, don't provoke him. Yeah, so this is kind of like the don't argue, but I've heard it 1,000 times. Like, don't, and it's very old fashioned as well. Like that opinion, don't provoke him or don't like upset him or whatever. I just feel like it's very, it's a little bit misogynistic. But um, that night, I think, I mean, I have spoken about this in my story episode, but I think it was more important to me to stand my ground and be seen as strong. Um, so I didn't want my daughter's last memory to be of me begging for my life. I was pretty convinced, like, if we were going to die, and I genuinely was mentally prepared for that to happen within, like, I guess, a couple of hours from when this started. But I wanted her to remember me as strong. So um, if, like, I guess I'm not, I don't know, it's very hard to give advice like this because I can't tell you to do that because you've just got to do what you feel right. I guess that's my advice is trust your gut. So don't like take it too far and, get nasty about anything. But, there was things said that I had never said before, I'd never felt before. Like don't touch me, like I don't want you near me. I was genuinely quite disgusted. And just saw him as an actual monster. Like that just wasn't the person that I fell in love with anyway in that moment. So I guess I felt more like I was speaking to like an intruder, I guess. Someone had broken in and was like trying to, I don't know, like I think that's how I actually did get through it, was treating it that way. Um, yeah, which causes a lot of weird thoughts in my head. Like that's how I feel like he would have wanted me to be to someone that would intrude. Ah, that's fucked up, eh? Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, if you need something immediate, so obviously things taken off you or whatever, and you're in that situation, you've got to try to be creative and find stuff. I would hope nobody has a weapon because that's terrifying, and I definitely don't recommend like going for a weapon like a freaking kitchen knife or anything. Like there's no, that's not what I'm thinking, especially with people like this. That's actually what they will likely go and um, safeguard when the initial sort of lockdown is happening. So they'll probably be looking for obvious things like devices you can use, locks you can get out of, and then, yeah, like weapons that you can use. What you need to do is think about like things that they wouldn't think about, so smart things or things that they have no idea that you've even pre-planned. So like you can get these loud personal alarms, memorize an exit route as well, share a code word with someone, like I mentioned before, but it could be with a friend or something. Backup evidence in a locked folder, huge one. Um, they won't fix everything, but they're less likely to make a bad situation worse. And that's sort of along the lines of the questionnaire thing that I was talking about in the trailer as well, which I will put the link for again in the notes as well. That's why I'm trying to make these like safety kits or whatever. So like for the spicy cadence ADHD side of it, that's definitely still in the works, but this is definitely more important. Currently, I feel like it's more critical at the moment, especially it's just like basically an epidemic at the moment, the freaking rise of family violence and stuff. Um, so, um, yeah, so just do what you can. Try to be creative. Some people some people talk about like homemade sprays, like, you know, cayenne pepper in a bottle of water, in a spray bottle or something, like some weird hacks. Because, when the system doesn't protect you, you've got to do what you got to do. I won't tell you how to make one here or ever, because not because I don't understand, but because I don't want to get you in trouble or hurt someone by accident or anything like that. Um, I'll just say some of us keep a parasite spray in the kitchen. Jokes on the label, not the intent. But I'm not giving recipes on this show, just saying. Anyway, so moving on to planning to leave. So every service loves a checklist. So, pack a bag and change your routine and change the, make sure your car's parked a certain way. Tell someone you trust. It's all good on paper, but paper doesn't live in fear like we do. In real life, planning to leave means hiding phone chargers, memorizing routes, printing Google Maps directions, stashing them in locked folders. Um, it means smiling at the perpetrator when, you know, most people would be showing fear, I guess. Like, you just got to play the game sometimes so that they don't notice the shift, especially when you're getting close to the leaving stage. It's the most dangerous time for a person when they leave. I'm sure we've heard before. And if he suspects anything, you're done. Like, so yeah, negotiation that night brought me hours, but negotiation's not a safety plan. I just really want to be clear. It's a survival reflex. So don't plan to negotiate ever. Just understand that that may be a fear response and like an adrenaline type deal that may pop up. And just try to be smart about it. But most people that go through this sadly have to become very smart anyway, because they learn the hard way and long way that, you know, things are not going to change and that they need to leave. And when people say at least you made it out, what they don't understand is that making it out doesn't mean you're safe. I am one to talk right now, this very second, about that. It just means you're still breathing, not to mention the absolute fear that comes from being like trapped and spending 14 hours trapped like I did back then, waiting to die. Like, yeah, I'm lucky. Like, it's not. Anyway, cool. So reporting after, we're told that breaching an order is a criminal offence, that police have to act, but have to doesn't mean that they will. I attempted to report a breach not all that long ago, and I thought the worst was going to be over then. I handed over evidence, witness names, proof of stolen items. They never spoke to the witnesses. They never even visited his house. They called him and his mother and took their denial as fact, and that was it. They then closed the case and didn't actually tell me. I had to follow it up, and I spoke to the officer who I made that report to, um, and she actually asked me, well, but did he actually like physically hurt you? And I was like, you mean did he punch me in the face? And she's like, well, yeah. So, yeah, as if fear and theft and threat only count if you're bleeding, apparently, I suppose. I then actually kicked back and said, well, I asked her if she had had any proper family violence training. I was in the room with my counsellor at the time, who got a good laugh out of that, but I was genuinely serious. And she said, yes. So I would just like to take a second to educate everybody here on who the infamous training was run by for Tas Police for like trauma-informed family violence stuff. For anybody who doesn't know, Dr. Fiona Gherkin, a UTAS lecturer who teaches police recruits about family violence, gave an interview with Bettina Arndt, I don't know how to say that, in May this year. In that interview, this is the person that teaches the officers on the front line about family violence and how to treat victims, just to clarify. And I quote, it's good to have a coercive control law, but I think you need to look at that in conjunction with other stuff. I just don't think it's fair to charge someone based on manipulation. She said, women are extremely manipulative and do use coercive control on a regular basis. She said she believed that women were probably more manipulative than men in many ways. So those were the three key things that stood out. And that's who taught our frontline officers who respond to us when we are pleading for our lives and our children's lives. And that's the filter victims are met with when they ask for help. The irony of this is the same female officer who treated me like an inconvenience had previously attended a safety check at my home alongside a male officer. They both were there. They both saw the house. They saw the same situation, the same terrified mum and child, but their actions or reactions couldn't have been more different. He was professional, compassionate, alert, the kind of officer who made me feel safe. He told me if my ex was caught nearby, he would personally take him in. I genuinely believed and do believe that he would. But it was definitely a bit of a false sense of security. So the tiny moment of competence gave me more comfort than any policy ever has. But then that was obviously flipped on its head when I needed help again. And it wasn't flipped by him, it was by her. And that's probably the third instance of a female officer that I encountered throughout this whole ordeal who was treated me appallingly, a lot worse than most of the male officers. So I just think that's quite interesting. Yeah. I met with an MP this week who seems lovely and up to date with the law and how it should run. She told me that police are required to investigate and charge for breaches of an order. Yet legal aid told me the opposite, that police decide whether they feel like charging or not. So on one hand, you've got the way that the law's been written to protect people, and then you've got the reality of the situation from a criminal lawyer in legal aid who obviously knows firsthand because, he would deal with it constantly. So that was quite disheartening, and I got quite angry about that. To say that it's just when they feel like it, regardless of whether there's evidence or not, as if someone's safety depends on their mood, which is just messed up. That's so that's the loophole that follows thousands of breach reports every year. They log them as domestic disputes, not crimes. They decide what counts as serious. They decide whether your evidence matters. They decide. So, it's why I kind of wish that there was more lived experience input into certain decisions that are made, I guess, which I also spoke to this MP about. But yeah, like you basically report it and then you wait, and then you hear that they dropped the case, or worse, you don't hear anything at all, and yeah, feel all supported. Um, I'm not the only one. Um, Probably familiar with Hannah Clark, or maybe familiar with Hannah Clark, Hannah's Law, Small Steps for Hannah. So Hannah Clark did everything that the system told her to do. She reported it, got orders, followed the process, and still she and her three children were murdered in their car. So in part two, I'm going to talk a bit more about Hannah's story and about coercive control, Hannah's Law, and what criminalising abuse actually means when the people enforcing it still get to decide whether to care or not, essentially holding people's lives in their hands. Because until enforcement means action, until evidence means consequence, these myths are going to keep killing people, and the inaction is going to as well. So yeah, that's part one. I'm going to get on to part two shortly. Thank you for listening. If any part of this hits home where you have a story or safety plan that may have backfired, please share it in the comments, or one that worked. Your voice matters because lived experience is the only evidence that they can't ignore. I just really hope one day we can get to a point where we have more input in things. Cool. So that's a wrap for that one. Please like and subscribe, not for the algorithm, just more so that people can hear it and the awareness, because the harder it becomes for anyone to pretend they didn't know, like, the more likely things are to change, I guess, in my little fantasy world. So let's keep the fantasy going, guys, okay? All right, I will be back with part two in a little while. Thanks for listening.